It's a ballot. It's not provisional yet. The only way you know it's provisional is because it goes back in that yellow envelope, am I right? It goes back to the board. That's if it gets there. Almost fed it to the machine while I'm there. Until I told her, I said, you can't do that. You've got to give him the yellow envelope, then I will know that it's provisional. So we were in a room like this, and somebody said, why don't you just make them a different color? Make the provisional ballots different colors. Genius, genius. So we introduced the amendment, right? What happened down there?
It didn't get through.
You were in caucus.
Yeah.
I tried to get it through the committee. I even reached out to Aaron Ackerman, the lobbyist for the Board of Election Officials, right? He said, Chris, we're aware of the problem. It's statewide. We know that every election that these provisional ballots are making their way into the machines. I said, Aaron, fix it. I don't care what you do. Look, I'll change my amendment. I'll work with you folks. Just between you and the Secretary of State, even put in their language of a directive to the Secretary of State with the boards of election officials that they're going to fix this problem by such and such a date. I don't care, but just get it done. People know that this is a problem. We don't want it happening anymore. There's got to be a way to do this. So one thing they brought up, well, that's going to be expensive. You make those a different color. Then I explained to him later that, because he thought we wanted to discount them, and this wasn't even my idea, but it was Board of Election Officials' idea. He said, well, you know, it's a different color. That's actually great, because if it's in the bottom, we can actually discount that ballot, because it wasn't supposed to be in there. We could discount it from the vote. That sounds good to me. If for some reason it makes its way in there, like the pink one, right? And they said, well, we can't do that. I said, well, really the reason why we wanted a different color is to flag it. So that the person working the machine can see, oh, that's provisional ballot. Sir, ma'am, you'll have to go back to the desk here. They'll put that in a yellow envelope, go back to the board, and they'll process it there for you. That's a very simple remedy, but it didn't get in. See, sometimes simple stuff doesn't get done. Is that right, Matt?
It takes courage to do what's right. And the Republican Party leadership has no courage.
Well, it can get frustrating. Okay, next slide. We're going to take some Q&A here. Hang on to that question. Okay, Houston wants proof of voter fraud. We gave it to him. Next. This is all the, and again, we're going to make this link available so you can see the report yourself of the various counties of how many irregularities, cases turned over to county officials. This, of course, has been updated since then. I'm going to ask the Secretary of State to update this report because it doesn't include the 90 cases in Franklin County, other counties that turned over for prosecution. And what does it take? It takes the will of a local prosecutor and that Board of Election. You know the Attorney General can't touch it. It's a local issue. So in Cauga County, do you know that there wasn't one single voter fraud case in all of Cauga County in November 16th? Not one.
Efficiency.
Efficiency! They're really good over there.
They're perfectly perfect.
It's a one-party rule.
Yes.
It's all sublime. We have a gentleman that worked inside, a Republican inside the Board of Election, who himself, in his own count, counted 4 double votes in his own count, and there was 20 such stations. Other stations also counted double votes, voting in person and voting absentee. He reported it to the board. The board turned it over to the prosecutor. The prosecutor did nothing. What? Nothing in Cauga County. I told Mike DeWine, he said, I can't do anything with it. Got a real problem in Cauga County. I want some of you folks to think about working the polls in Cauga County in the next big election. And you're like, oh boy, really? I know where they're going to stick me. My husband won't let me go there. So anyway, look, the only way to safeguard the election, I say it's like this. It's like 2 groups of thieves counting over the same pot of money. You have to have D's and R's looking over the vote at all times. That's how it's honest, right? That's how it works. And in counties where you have one-party rule, that's a problem. And in Cauga County, we got a major problem. Richard May, I asked him because he was working and it was, it was going to be his day job. And I said, well, you ready? Because you might lose your job if you come out and talk about this. He said, I'm ready. So he gave a whole sworn statement thing of what he saw. You have what's called, I forget what their specific names is, but when your precinct is done and you have the couriers who take the vote, right? And they take it back. Democrat and Independent. That's right. They didn't have enough R's. So Democrat and Independent, which is probably another Democrat, handling the ballots from there down to the Board of Elections. Like I said, Chicago-style electioneering, it's here in Ohio. We got to stop it. That's why we're hard after this. So they got Senate Bill 216, a provisional ballot bill. And it is a good bill. It requires more information on the outside of the sleeve. And over the objections of the Democrat, by the way, it actually will help some people to vote for their ballot to count. You know, as I was working there was an elderly gentleman, and he was a little frustrated with the whole thing, and they couldn't find him in the book, and he's an older veteran. I thanked him for his service. He appreciated that. He really lit up when I told him that. And I said that to every vet. And I started helping him. I said, well, let's fill this out. So we're filling out this information on the provisional ballot sleeve together. If there's something in there, that ballot won't count. Bill Seitz' bill requires more information. The Democrat on the committee was howling about that. But anybody that knows anything that works at the polls knows that if you put more accurate information, there's a greater likelihood that that ballot's going to count. And I want that man's ballot to count. He fought for this country. He may not have the same political views that I do, but his vote is just as precious as mine. So we have to be adults in this conversation. And unfortunately, that's why we took it out of the hands of the politicians and a statewide citizens audit was conducted. Now, the media knew that what we were doing was a serious effort. It was all volunteer effort. We provided for them the audit, as we had it at the end, the sworn statements, the categories of problems with provisional ballots, voting machines, irregularities, suspicious activity. The voter fraud was already evidenced by what the Secretary of State had delivered to them. They know it exists. If they had actually taken statewide and blew up what we had talked about, then the whole state would say, hey, we got to have something done here. But what we're going to do is rally around photo ID requirement in Ohio, just like here, everybody's excited about. We're going to hold a rally at the State House. That does have an impact, doesn't it, Matt? When you show up in numbers, they take you seriously, right?
Afraid. You make them afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a time to do that. I don't know, you know, I've been doing this 12 years. Most of the time, they know the constituency that we have. I don't have to yell or shout or threaten. That's not my nature anyways. But I have to say I'm a little frustrated at this point because I was in Washington to Grover Norquist's meeting. I went there because we had an opportunity to give a presentation on election reform and voter fraud. It was the week of CPAC. So there's like 250 people in there. There's all these movers and shakers in there. Jack Boyle, a friend of mine, you know, he says, well, we got a few minutes here. I said, that's great, let's do it. And at the end of my presentation, Grover says, let's see, you have a Republican House, a Republican Senator, a Republican Governor, where's the problem? I said, exactly. Why aren't we getting photo ID requirement done here? This is a problem. So that's the work we have to do. We need to kind of push this because there's a small window of time. They're doing the mid-budget review now, and then they go into election mode. There's that lame duck, and I'm tired of being told, don't worry, we'll deal with that in lame duck. Isn't that right, Matt? The false promise.
It's nonsense.
It's terrible. And I've heard that story enough. So why is this important? Why we got to get done? Because do you want there to be on election night 2016 Hillary Clinton winning the state by a very narrow margin? And there's always going to be a doubt in your mind. How much fraud took place? So let's try to lock it up, make it ironclad as possible with common sense election reform laws that work for Ohio. And I would charge the Democrats, let's have an adult conversation, is how much early voting is enough early voting? Well, there's a bill down there now, House Bill 250, 2 weeks of early voting. That's fine. 2 weeks of early voting, but it leaves a full week before the election where there is no voting. And you know, you get rid of this business of now after this election there'll be 29 days of early voting. That's still way too much. You still have walk-in vote and mail-in ballots. They've done some, but they didn't do it all. And we got to make sure this is done. So House Bill 250 will lessen it to 2 weeks. We support House Bill 250. House Bill 269, photo ID requirement in Ohio.